Recovered Addict Podcast. I want to start off with a real life story from someone named Sarah. And she had, which you'll recognize this, she had an addiction to alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
And how it began was it was her way to cope with social anxiety.
Interesting.
So she had social anxiety. And at parties or gatherings, the only way that she would feel at ease is to drink alcohol.
Yep.
And the addiction really was rooted in a desire to alleviate her anxiety. And all alcohol became was a crutch to handle the anxiety instead of taking the time we're going to talk about today and do a self-assessment on the anxiety itself.
Very interesting. Yeah, and completely normal.
Yes.
For alcoholics and drug addicts.
Yes.
I don't feel comfortable in my own skin.
Yes.
My skin is crawling.
I love that. Yes.
Now I'm in fear. The fear is shutting off oxygen to my brain, and I'm having an energetic response. Cortisol levels increase. I'm in the sympathetic nervous system. I'm now in fight or flight. I feel like I'm about to enter a battle, and I'm really at a house party.
Right.
And what can I do to not feel this? Boom. Alcohol works so quickly.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it's easy to get addicted to. I instantly feel something different. Drugs do the same thing. Gambling does the same thing. Sex does the same thing.
Right.
I instantly feel something different. So go down the rabbit hole enough with that behavior, and sure, it's the mask of my anxiety. But what's my anxiety? That's just the mask of not being comfortable in my own skin. How do I get comfortable in my own skin?
Yeah, it's like, and I'm not, maybe you need them. I'm not a medical, we're not medical in any ways, but like antidepressants are the same way. It's like, is the pill, have I realistically dealt with my depression and done a deep dive in my depression? Like for me, I found, for me personally, not saying for everybody else, maybe people need, antidepressants, I don't know. But for me, I was prescribed 8 different antidepressants, right? Nothing worked for me. It just made me tired and I couldn't think very well, like cloudy. That's what it did for me. What worked for me was doing the shadow work enough to understand my depression comes from self-pity.
Interesting.
When I'm putting myself first and then I'm believing everybody's against me, that's where my depression hits. And then I start believing that story that I tell myself, that false story narrative. Then it's just a spiral.
Yes.
To where I'm laying on the couch, watching horror movies, eating junk food, and not wanting to leave the house.
It's easier to hide from the world.
Yes. Feeling suicidal, all that stuff.
Yes.
But I want to get in today. Now, this is part 2. So people need to listen to part 1. And what would you call the deep self-inquiry? Like a self-assessment? What do you call it?
It's a personal inventory. It's a personal inventory. So when I take stock of my grocery store, hypothetical, I'm writing down, I'm taking inventory of everything on the shelf, right? And that's what I'm doing with my behavior. That's what I'm doing with my fear. That's what I'm doing with my resentment. That's what I'm doing with my sexual conduct. That's what I'm doing with my role in these areas. So a personal inventory, a self-assessment. Again, we discussed this in part 1, but guidance is very important through this process. I'm just not writing down things willy-nilly. I have a good, hopefully we can get plugged into a support group. We can get plugged into some type of recovery group, and I'm getting guidance through this process. I'm not just stumbling through it, making this up. Like this is not a new Jason and Duane idea. Like this has been going on for thousands of years. But when I have an accurate view of the things that are kicking my ass, my behavior and my thinking, then maybe I can have an accurate view of a solution-oriented direction.
And recognizing it's thousands of years. When you said that, I laughed because I was thinking of the old Western movies. Remember, they would go work really hard, 12, 15-hour days, and then they come into town after they get their money.
Oh, yeah.
And they blow it on booze women.
Yeah.
I mean, you could just see it fighting. Like, I mean, you could watch those old Westerns. That was what it was about, and they just blow all their money. And then they have to go back out to work again.
Yep.
So, and they would get like finally take a bath, and it's like all these funny, movies and
I
stuff
love
like
Westerns.
that. Yeah, I do too. But you see that, and it's like that was in the 1800s. There was the addicts. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Some literature says there has been alcoholics since they crushed grapes. Like when they started doing that shit in Greece. Trust me,
honey with the mead.
Yeah, there were enough. There were people drinking uncontrollably even then. There's a reason that you have the god of euphoria, wine and euphoria, Dionysus.
Yeah,
I was Dionysus reincarnated. That was my excuse to get blackout drunk all the time.
Yeah, it's so funny. I talked to a brewer, and I was like, "You're around beer all the time." He goes, "Yeah, I taste it, drink it." But he goes, "I just taste it or drink it." He goes, "It's not a, which I love beer, but it's not a. For him, it's not, like he's like, you couldn't be an alcoholic and be a brewer. Like you have to look at it like a craft.
You would burn your business to the ground.
Yeah, exactly. Because he's a well-known brewer here.
He's right.
You couldn't be an alcoholic and be a brewer. Like he's not. He's like, I'll taste like a little. I have these little jars. I'll go up to the vat, and just taste a little bit. And he's like, I'm not getting a buzz. Yeah. It's rare that I.
That's like a drug addict trying to sell drugs. It's like, no, he used his whole supply.
Yeah, exactly. So let's get into identifying patterns, behaviors, and underlying beliefs in this self-inquiry. And in the process of this very scary, and I know you're going to be fearful when you do this. We talked about this we're going to start to notice reoccurring patterns. And these patterns might include consistently prioritizing your own needs over others. So why do you think the bottle for Duane caused you to put your own needs over others?
Perhaps my parents did a good job. And perhaps I knew it was wrong to behave selfish and self-centeredly. I knew it was wrong. There was an intrinsic moral barometer inside of me that would go off when I took something that didn't belong to me.
That makes sense. Yes.
There was an intrinsic part of me, a natural part of me that knew it was not right to sleep with that girl, tell her she's the only one I love, and simultaneously sleep with another girl and tell her, no, I'm not seeing anybody else. There was something inside of me that knew that wasn't right. The alcohol made it easy not to look at that.
That makes sense.
I did not have to look.
It would just blur the line of morality.
I wouldn't even look at it.
Yeah,
it wasn't blurred.
I'm having fun.
Yeah, it wasn't blurred.
It was great.
It was easy to turn a blind eye because I didn't have to feel how uncomfortable it was to go against my morality. I was behaving immoral. I was doing stuff that I knew was wrong. But in my drinking, I didn't have to look at it. It became an excuse to perpetuate the bad behavior. And you don't know that. I didn't know that early in recovery.
You don't realize you're putting yourself over everything else.
No, you'd find that out through years of introspection. It's important that every individual has their own journey with this process and pull back their own layers of why was I dishonest? Why did I have to behave this way? What is this desire to get what I want above all else? And then how come I kept doing it? That's for every individual to answer by themselves. But for me, the alcohol allowed me to turn a blind eye to my bad behavior. And then after enough of that, that's the only behavior I know. That's just how I'm getting through the world.
It becomes a norm.
That's it. Exactly right. Our alcoholic life becomes our only normal one. I didn't know there was a different way to live. So a recovery program provides me with a different way to approach life.
Yeah, it's like I was reading a book on World War II, and they were talking about, in Great Britain, England, all that area, they eventually got used to the bombings. And then people started just having kids and they would get married. They were showing this one picture of this couple. They got married. Their house got bombed that night. It was all blown up into pieces. And then the next day they have a picture of them in there. They went ahead and had their wedding. It just becomes the craziness becomes normal.
Mm-hmm.
You don't, it's not that big of a deal that a bomb just went through your house because you see it every day.
That's wild.
And Jordan Peterson talks about this, and I think it's so interesting.
Yes.
And how the people in the mental health institutes in Great Britain, the men had a purpose and they got well. Like they were like, we have no one else to drive this. We've got dead bodies all around, and we have an ambulance sitting here, and we have literally no men to drive it.
Wow.
And mental health people started like helping move bricks, help rescue people.
Yes.
And all of a sudden they're like, I'm fine now.
Yeah.
Like they just needed a purpose.
Their life. Yeah,
how
their life
many
took on meaning?
How many people, if they would do this work through this, they would find their meaning and purpose through this self.
If I'm sincere, everybody.
So you want to find your meaning and purpose in life, which everybody does.
Yes.
Do this work. I mean, that's where it leads to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Shouldering responsibility gives me meaning and purpose.
I like the word shouldering responsibility, like putting a backpack on.
Very good. Yeah, absolutely.
Like, I'm shouldering.
Well, and it's a load.
It is.
It's a load.
And it should be.
Do you know what?
You fucked up.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Again, Jordan Peterson, to reference, human beings are beasts of burden.
Mm-hmm.
We're very similar to sled dogs in that perspective. Take away the sled and the dog doesn't know what the fuck to do with himself.
Yes.
We're built for a burden. We're built to carry a load. It's just about finding the load that works for me.
That's the purpose in the
That's the purpose. That's what responsibility
But life is too easy now.
Yeah, it's too easy. Yes.
So I might as well just numb myself out with Netflix or numb myself out with vagina or dick or relationships or alcohol or cocaine, whatever it may be.
Not only is it easy, it's socially acceptable.
Or for me, donuts.
It's the norm.
Right.
It's the norm. 95 to 98% of the world is walking through their day unconscious.
Yes.
I'm not willing to take responsibility for this. It's Donald Trump's fault.
Yeah.
I'm not willing to take responsibility for this. It's the bank's fault.
Biden's or whoever. Yeah.
Whoever. Yeah. We just throw the whole bird out. We don't care.
Yeah. Yeah.
I couldn't possibly take responsibility for my health.
Mm-hmm.
It's my mom's fault because she cooked.
I have a genetic disposition.
She cooked gnocchi every Sunday.
Yeah, yeah.
And now I love pasta. People are taught to sidestep responsibility, but when I shoulder responsibility and I take on the load, my life gets huge. My life takes on meaning. I got places to go and things to do, and I'm maybe, God willing, excited about it.
Yeah, it's like take out the trash or
fantastic.
You had to do that when you were in your recovery. They would have you take out the trash.
Take out the trash. You want to be of purpose? Take out the
This is the most important thing you could do for the day.
Yeah.
Is to show up to this meeting and take the fucking trash out. And from there, through respect and earning it, you'll get where you're leading him.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and also I began to belong. I was no longer this outsider that was just there selfishly to take.
Yes. Yeah, yeah.
They said, no, come in here and give.
Yeah, but that's not the prioritizing your needs over others. That's you now serving others in humility.
That's the flip of this, continuously prioritizing my own needs over others.
And the next one is acting from a place of fear, which we talked about. And I like the word acting from a place.
Yeah.
So it's what stage do you want to be on? Let's flip the lights on. What's the background? What's the scenery you want? What's the audience you want? You're a creator in this world. So what stage do you want to be on? Do you want to be on a stage of fear? Or do you want to be on a stage of creating happiness, love, joy? You control the matrix. If we're creators.
Absolutely.
We were endowed. I mean, the Constitution of the United States says that we're endowed by a creator.
Yeah.
And that we're all equal. So if we are creators, and we can create whatever we want, I would imagine we can create how we're going to act.
Very powerful.
Don't you think?
We're creating our own reality.
Yes, that's what. Yes,
now,
exactly.
Do I want to be in the reality of vertical dimension, infinite possibility, infinite abundance, infinite access to source and solution, or do I want to be in horizontal dimension, the world of form? What happens if that form goes away? I'm afraid I'm going to lose that form. I'm going to lose that money. I'm going to lose that relationship. Now I'm navigating the world in this horizontal dimension, and I'm in fear. I'm in ego.
Don't you think that fear is just a false reality of what you think is real, but it's not? It's for me, when I'm most fearful is when I'm believing that this is all there is.
Absolutely.
You know, like this woman is all that there is for me. This job is all that there is for me.
Yeah.
Like I could easily, and you're the same way as we've talked about this. I can get a job in 4 hours.
Yep.
Like I'm just that way. I'll go and talk to 100 people in an afternoon, put a tie on and go talk to a bunch of people, and I can get a job. I don't worry. I've never not had a job.
You'd get 10 jobs.
Yeah. And you're the same way. Like you get a job literally this afternoon.
Yeah.
Like no, there'd be no question about it. So why do we worry about that? Why are we worrying about money? I mean, maybe a job that we don't like and the necessary, but I mean, I could go and get a job. I could probably pretty confident I could get a job that I like. And same with you.
Yeah. You know what? That's a very good way to present this topic.
Right.
And part of it is my conditioned behavior. Part of it is my conditioning. Eckhart Tolle likes to say, and of course, Hindu Buddhist teachings, there's no tiger in the room.
That's good. Yes.
Yeah. Why am I having the energetic response of fear?
Yes.
Why am I behaving as if there's a tiger in this room?
Yeah. Stop looking for him.
Right. It is a portion of that is my brain is wired to detect predators. Tiger is a fucking big predator. So is a snake. So is a predatory bird. And when that circuitry goes off in my brain, it's good to be afraid. If you got to get away from a tiger, you better be afraid.
And the ego,
and you're going to move quickly. You're going to move quickly.
Self-preservation.
But now, that's not happening to me today. We're not 150,000 years ago in the trees combating these predators. But my brain has been conditioned to go there with money. My brain has been conditioned to go there in traffic with my boss, with my coworkers, with the world around me. Now the world around me becomes these predators, and my brain doesn't know any difference. I'm fighting a tiger.
I'll fight an avocado.
Yes.
And the price. The avocado doesn't even know who I am.
Oh my God, gas. I'm going to fight a gas
that's just
tank.
Liquid.
Yeah. And so rewiring the neocortex, the new brain, is the task of spiritual development, especially when it comes to my perspective of fear. We can rewire that.
Yes.
I have tools today, and I can tell myself, that's not real. That's not happening to me today. Very interesting. The neuroscientists discovered that. We talked about this, the predatory call for that monkeys used to give each other for snake, cat, and bird. It's the same neurological wiring that goes off in our brain when we curse. When I say fuck, or when I say whatever bad word, short, guttural word, archaic word, it's the same. So when I say this fucking avocado, it's fucking gas. I'm literally cursing the thing that I used to ancestrally view as a predator. That's the same neurological part of the brain. We used to say, hey, look out, predator. And now, thousands of years later, I'm still saying, hey, predator. But it's not reality. It's a delusion. The avocado is not a predator to me. Why am I having an energetic response as it is? So we're very interested in rewiring the brain, but we're also very interested in navigating the world with more freedom.
Yeah, and it's so funny. If you just don't put an avocado, but put it in a relationship.
Yes.
Why am I looking at my boyfriend as a snake that's going to attack me and kill me?
Very good, yes.
Because the response, the energetic response through evolutionary psychology that I'm having right now is that he's a snake and he's a predator and he's going to kill me.
So powerful.
If you think of it that way, it's funny then.
There's a reason the serpent...
It's like, oh, I'm overreacting. He's not a fucking snake. He may be kind of, but...
There's a reason the serpent in the garden has this satanic connotation.
Right.
Nowhere in Genesis does it say that's the devil.
Right. Right.
It doesn't say that. That explanation evolved over thousands of years of storytelling, but the correlation with the snake is that's a predator that used to kill us,
or it can beguile us, like it could talk us into something.
Yes,
like
yes.
you better
Sneaky,
be careful,
so
like you don't want your woman going around a snake, because
yes.
next thing you know, she's giving you an apple, or an STD.
So a nice tool for us, for any person in a relationship or whatever it is, the thing that's kicking your ass is, oh, that's not a snake.
No, yeah, exactly.
That is such a nice tool to just be able
well,
to
it makes
tell
it hilarious.
myself, yes, bring the comic relief can crack open my ego. It's my ego that's afraid. So I can have this spiritual mantra and say, oh, that's not a snake. That's just my bank account.
Yes, exactly.
That's not a snake. That's just an accident on the highway. Oh, that's not a snake. That's the mantra. That's the mantra. That's the spiritual tool. That's not a snake. And obviously the undercurrent of that mantra is, I'm choosing not to live in fear right now. I'm choosing to walk in courage, in strength, in vertical dimension. I am not choosing fear right now.
Well, the opposite of fear is love.
Boom.
So, the Bible's real clear on that. It talks about that multiple times, but, and so I always look at that. It's like when I'm in fear with this person, thing, or whatever it may be, I'm not in love. I'm out. I'm out of the, I've switched. You can't have fear and love hanging out in the same room.
No.
You know what I mean? So when I'm being fearful, I am not being loving. And the number one thing that I can do is to love others, love the world, love the tree, love the mountain, all that stuff, And I'm not talking about like going up to a tree and hugging it or whatever. That's great.
Yeah. And to be honest, Jay, and this already, but this is important for people to hear, though. This is the next step in human evolution. Like, we're not going to get bigger and stronger.
No,
we're not.
Yeah,
But we are going to evolve spiritually, God willing, and be able to say, I'm choosing love today.
That's what they were talking about.
Choosing to walk in love.
And I've told you this before, but they were talking about like UFO, like aliens. Like they have small spindly bodies, no sex organs, and a huge head with a big brain. So it's kind of like they've evolved past the evolutionary monkey mind.
Yes.
And whether you believe in them or not, it doesn't matter. But I want to get into, because I think this is good too, not only prioritizing our own needs over others or acting from a place of fear, but this one is good. Seeking control in unhealthy ways.
Yeah.
Seeking control in unhealthy ways. Now, being a leader, that's a healthy way. Like if you're self-sacrificial and you're leading people, that's what we're not talking. We're not talking about that. We're talking about manipulation.
Yes.
We're talking about dishonesty, which we talked about. We talked a lot about dishonesty in the last episode. But why do I have a desire to seek control?
The second we've talked about this before also, but it's important. The second greatest lie I ever tell myself in addiction is, well, if only you were different,
yes,
I would be okay.
Yes.
It's a delusion. And I tell myself that all day, every day.
So the minute, I don't mean to interrupt you, but the minute I think that you're not okay, then I have choices. I can act in fear. And in that action of fear, the choice that I have is to try to control you, which is an illusion.
Exactly.
Or I'm going to run away from you.
Yeah. I'm out.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's easier.
Yeah. But so that's the addict brain.
But the real, the real telling sign of an addict is, well, I'm going to try harder.
Yeah.
I'm going to do the exact same thing, but I'm going to get a different result this time.
Yeah.
That's the first greatest lie.
Yeah.
And so the lie I tell myself in that delusion is, I'll be able to control their behavior. I'll be able to manipulate the situation so that I get what I want. I can use my words as dishonest tools to help perpetuate my addiction. That's all they are.
How much of it do you think, whenever you're looking at control or like seeking control? Because I like the word seeking, because you never obtain it. It's an illusion. Yeah. There's no control. A meteorite could hit us right now. This podcast would never go out.
Good,
you know what I mean? Yeah. It's like, if this podcast goes out, it's because of, they've talked about this. amount of things that almost wiped out the human race multiple times, these huge cataclysmic, and you could be worried about that all day long.
Yeah.
But obviously if a meter hits, you're not going to know.
No.
You just gone back to source, and here we move on. But it's so funny to me, the illusion. It's an illusion to think that you can control anything.
Right.
You can't control the gas prices of today.
Nope.
Now, you tried to control it by keeping it at 40. You know what I mean?
You have to fill up sooner.
Yeah. Or me trying to control, I got a bad email, so I made an extra meeting just so I can see how everybody is to feel good.
Mm-hmm.
So I manipulated everything all the way around, make it like it wasn't so, and then I got the meeting, and then I'm going to see how the temperature of everybody in that meeting. So because that all came from fear, insecurity, and I can't control. I'm basing it off of delusion of what I think may not even be true.
Yes.
But I created all of this, and wasting people's time and doing all of these things, manipulating everything all around me, just so I can feel that I have a sense of control tomorrow after the meeting. You see how silly that is?
Yeah.
That was manipulation, control, all of that.
It's wild, but it's part of the game we were taught to play.
Mm-hmm.
Again, some of this is conditioned behavior. Some of this is, I need the world to act a certain way, and then I'll be okay. So what control mechanisms can I put in place so that I get my desired response, or I get my desired result? And if we're in the business of doing God's will, the world is no longer about what I want. And that's a motherfucker.
Yeah.
That's hard. That's a hard one to swallow. It's like,
That's a
what
tough
do you
one, yeah.
mean the world is not about what I want? And it's like, well, if my motive is pure, then that's the proper use of the will.
To love and serve others is the highest calling.
Yes. But if my motive is selfish, it's a losing strategy. It's miserable going through the world that way.
Which I think 99.9% of most people's viewpoint of how their life would be perfect is a version of having something more than I want now.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've talked to multimillionaires, and they're not happy because they're not a billionaire.
Yeah.
Their yacht is smaller than the billionaire's yacht.
Yep.
And then that yacht is 5 years old. It's not I didn't get from the factory the one that I wanted. Or, I went to the watch place. We like watches. I went to a watch place, and this guy got it and I didn't, because he's on the list, because he's bought more than me. There's all of this like
comparison and and ego.
So we've looked at this deep self-inquiry. I want to have an example here, a real world example of David. And he recognized a pattern in his life where he constantly sabotages relationships due to a deep-seated belief that he was unworthy of love. And this is what we're going to talk about next. Whenever someone got close to him, he would push them away with his addictive behavior. And so he did self-inquiry. And through the self-inquiry, he connected this pattern to a belief formed in his childhood when his parents divorced. So he found out his addiction was this belief that he had built, and like you said, a thought that you keep thinking over and over again is a belief about his parents' divorce. He all went back and found that he had never dealt with that, and then it ended up helping him with his addiction.
Very powerful.
Isn't that wild how that? So this believing you are unworthy of love or happiness. What is?
Yeah, so powerful.
In an addict's mind.
Yeah, to start to address these deep-seated issues. It's not surface level issues. And it's important that we say, and we encourage everyone to seek outside help. There are a bunch of recovery programs available. There are therapists available. There are countless approaches to getting well. And it's good to have guidance through this process, especially this deep-seated trauma, this deep-seated hurt. And it's interesting because my addiction can kind of be like gasoline on a fire when I have these deep-seated hurts, these deep-seated traumas that I'm not willing to look at. I don't really even understand. I don't know where they came from. And all I know is I'm miserable and I don't want to be here. And so the alcohol or the addiction is kind of like throwing gasoline on that. And it's just more fuel for this ugly way to go through the world, or this ugly feeling that I'm experiencing inside. And for many of us, there's a feeling of unwanted. There's a feeling of not good enough. There's a feeling of I don't deserve. And, maybe we picked that up in childhood. Gay Hendricks, in his book, The Big Leap, talks about the 4 major fears that individuals have. And one of them is the fear of being fundamentally flawed. There's something wrong with me.
Yes.
At the fundamental level, there's something wrong with me. Another one is the fear of being a burden. My existence is a burden. So any success that I might have is probably a further burden also. Another one is the fear of leaving others behind. Oh, if I do this, if I'm this successful, if I experience this, I'm going to leave. It's disloyal to my roots. I'm going to leave people behind. And then the last one is the fear of outshining others. This behavior, this spotlight, this success is going to outshine others, and I might even get in trouble.
Right.
Because I'm doing better than others. And all of those are basically, if I have a traumatic past, if I have these deep-seated issues, somewhere along the line, I got convicted of a crime I didn't commit. So we picked up some unconscious behavior from the people that reared us. And some of that unconscious behavior might have felt like you're fundamentally flawed.
Yeah, you're a victim to.
Yes. It might have.
Yeah, and to expect a parent to be perfect.
No,
silly.
They're just doing the best they can with what they have.
Yeah,
grandparents, parents.
They're not going to be consciously
teachers,
perfect.
Whatever it is.
Your parents are gonna hurt you.
Yes.
Period.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because they're human, and you're gonna get hurt by humans.
So we may have picked up some of this unconscious vibration.
Right.
Your existence is a burden. You're a burden. That's a big one. I had some of that, and I also had the fear of outshining.
Yeah. I watched a documentary on HBO about the Green River Killer. Now, he's the guy, he's killed the most. It's like 60-something women he's killed as a serial killer. And they were interviewing him. And on this documentary, you can watch the interview. And he was talking about his mom, of course, a lot of serial killers. And this is shadow work, and this is it. Yes. And this is what he felt. He felt that he was unworthy of love. And that his mom, and it was kind of weird, twisted in his head. Like that, he even said, I'm a weird dude because my mom would put me down and I thought I was a horrible person. But then as I started coming into my sexuality, I wanted my mom sexually. And there was like this weird thing, that his mom didn't realize that he did to him, by putting him down and then over sexual, all this weird stuff that went on. And he explains it all. And it's so interesting. And then this desire to, I'm fucked up, I'm not worthy, I need to control this. So I'm going to go grab prostitutes in Seattle and take them to the woods and then murder them. And he murdered like 60 of them, So, and all of this was this, this is extreme. Yeah. But this is where it goes. If you're psychotic, if you let this control you. And as we talked earlier about being the snake, that other person, I like to look at it this way too. It's like, you want to go down that rabbit hole, Jason? This is how dark it can get. Yeah. You need to handle this and deal with this and be who the person that you ought to be, because you are not unworthy. Very good. You wouldn't be here if you were unworthy. Yeah. So really it's about shining the light on the delusion that I may or may not have picked up along the way. Yes. It's like that crime that I got convicted of. I didn't commit it, but I am guilty of perpetuating the energy. Yes. It's like, okay, well, that wasn't real. I wasn't a burden, but I exist in my self-pity as if I am. So I can go there energetically and I can perpetuate the unconscious delusion. I can perpetuate the bad cycle. And it's our responsibility with this spiritual awakening, with this spiritual path, to start taking responsibility for the delusion. I might not ever be able to heal or fix the individuals that I picked this up from,
but I can take responsibility for my perspective of that old pattern conditioning and break the cycle.
Yeah, that's the key, to have the courage enough to break the cycle.
And that's the not going down the rabbit hole with it.
Yeah, my granddad may have been this way. My dad may have been this way, but I don't need to be that way. And that's what you did. You broke a pattern.
And you did too.
Yeah.
And that work is so powerful. We believe it heals generations in the past, simultaneously healing generations in the future. So my daughter does not have to have the same energetic delusion that I was raised with, but simultaneously, I didn't have to have a conversation with my parents about, hey, do you remember when you did this and it was really fucked up? Well,
yeah, there's no use having that.
We were just instantly different. I just had a different perspective of them. And that anger or that victimization was replaced with compassion.
That's true forgiveness right there.
Because they were just doing the best they could with what they had.
And understanding that, to me, is true forgiveness.
So not
because there's no such thing as forgiveness, really. Because you have to feel like somebody did something to you.
Yes, you just have to be separate.
And you're just a mirror of your parents, and your parents are a mirror of you. It's all one.
So not only did I have a different perspective of my parents, but my daughter doesn't have to have the same pain and hurt.
Yeah, because you shouldered that generational responsibility.
Yes. So this work is
and
very
did the work.
This work is very powerful.
Yeah, I love that.
It can heal both 3 generations at once.
I want to get into, and I think this is a really interesting one. What is, like, and I know you've had issues with this in the past. So fearing abandonment leading to manipulative behaviors, like fearing abandonment.
Yeah.
Like, what does that look like as a addict?
Again, some of this stuff is very deep-seated, and it's appropriate to walk through this with help and guidance, usually from a professional. We are not professionals, but my experience with that is valid. And the fear of being a burden, the fear of being fundamentally flawed, the fear of being left behind,
right?
The fear of being abandoned. Usually I pick that up when I'm very little. A child does not know how to navigate the world by themselves. And I had a very small experience with this at a micro level at a grocery store.
Yes.
My parent, I'll take responsibility first. Every single time we go to the grocery store, when I was very little, I was, a selfish child who just wanted to play all the time. I would beeline to the toy aisle. And my parent would have to stop what they were doing, no longer shop, come find me, get me in order enough to get in the cart or whatever, and then go about their shopping. I did this for years. Well, one day we go to the grocery store, I beeline to the toy aisle. My parent did not come find me. They had had enough. And they were trying to teach me a lesson. But in that small example, the amount of fear that I felt, the amount of abandonment that I felt, it was powerful enough to have a molecular input on me. And unconsciously, that started contributing to how it mapped the world. Oh, well, I must not be good. I'm not wanted.
Right.
I must not be good enough if they just left me in the grocery store. And they didn't leave me. You know what I mean? Like, they never left the store without me.
Yeah, or like, this woman's going to leave me.
Yes,
this relationship.
Yes. So unconsciously, I begin to map the world this way. I'm not good enough. I don't deserve a woman that will stay, a partner that will stay. So unconsciously, I started seeking out situations where I could relive that experience. And I was not doing the shadow work. I was not trying to heal this part of me that was unconscious and delusional. I was just experiencing it over and over and over again in my relationships.
So you would have to, because of the fear of abandonment, you would have to manipulate others.
In my job. I would manipulate the situation as such that people would leave.
Right.
And then I was so unconscious, I felt like it was abandonment. I'm being abandoned all over again. So the energetic feeling of abandonment, although it's bad, it was normal because I behaved that way so often. It just became normal. So I started seeking that out over and over and over again because I didn't know any other way. So the manipulation led to the abandonment. But once we start getting honest with the inquiry and the personal inventory and getting this stuff down on paper, I can then start taking responsibility for my behaviors, for my manipulativeness. And then maybe I get some clarity on the fact that I cannot be abandoned.
Yes.
Today, I'm an adult male. You cannot abandon me. Like I am not a little tiny 4-year-old victim in the Smith's grocery store. Like that's an old tape that I've been playing for a long time and it keeps me fucking small.
Yeah.
Like if that's my perspective, I'm just an infant. I'm a child. It's like, no, you're not.
Or the person that's been abused.
Mm-hmm.
So I stay small because, and I'm always subconsciously seeking an abuser.
Yes.
Because I am the abused, and just, and I want people to understand this, that you and our notes talk about this, but you're just a human in pain. You're not a bad person.
Very good.
You're not different from anybody else.
Very good. Yeah.
You've just have some pain that it takes responsibility on your part to handle and deal with.
Yes.
And you have tools inside of you. That's the good news.
Yeah.
Every single person has enough tools inside of them to conquer. Mm-hmm. I believe that. I believe our higher self is in us, and we have the ability within ourselves to fix ourselves.
Yeah.
We do not need a religious book. We do not need a guru. We do not need any of this. All we need is to do enough self-inquiry over and over and over again, like you did, to get to the point to where you see it, you recognize it, and then through that recognition, healing begins to happen.
Very good.
It's the light. It's all it is.
And you've done the work also. The simple tool for us is, that's not happening to me today.
I'm not eating a donut today.
That's not happening to me today. I'm not 4 years old being left in the grocery store.
Yes. Yeah.
What am I? I'm right here, right now.
Mm-hmm. Or like for me, it's like, this person is not against me. They pretty much care less about
They're not
me.
even thinking about me.
I'm thinking about everybody else here and thinking everybody thinks I'm the worst enemy of all of them.
Mm-hmm.
But it's so ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, the list goes on and on with it. I do want to get into 3 things really quick, and then we'll, get into, because I want to talk about compassion and seeking guidance, and then, getting help. But one of the things that you can do for, and this is some prompts for you when you're writing this out, whether you want to call it journaling or whatever, list specific instances where you acted out of fear or self-interest. We've talked about that, but be specific. Number 2, write down reoccurring behaviors you notice and try to identify the belief driving them. And that's where, like with your abandoned, that belief,
yes,
I'm going to get abandoned. That's the belief. Number 3, reflect on how these patterns have affected your relationships in your life. So how have they done it? Get into the how. Not the why, the how. The how specific. And then I want you to talk about this, Duane, the importance of compassion. How can you not fall into the trap of just having self-blame when you're going through this process and just thinking you're like, I'm the worst person ever. I hurt this person. Because you basically had to say, I hurt my mom. I hurt my brother, who I love tremendously. And I've hurt these girls that I've been in relationships with, I've hurt these bosses. I mean, you got to write all this shit down.
Oh yeah.
So how do you not have self-blame? Because self-blame is just narcissistic. It's just a pattern you fall into.
Yes.
That's going to lead to you committing an addictive act.
Right. That's a big question, and it unfolds over time. It's a very normal response to be hard on myself, especially when I start looking at myself accurately and I don't like what I see.
Yes.
So it's normal to be hard on ourselves. It's normal to be disgusted in my behavior. I was disgusted in my behavior. I couldn't believe I behaved this way. But it was the first time that I was honest with myself. So
and that's beautiful.
Yes.
Like
yes.
you got to recognize that and get happy about that.
Yes,
and
yes.
get pumped up. Like, this is the first time I'm honest with myself.
That's a small win.
It's a big win.
It's a big win.
But I mean, just to recognize that, because this is the pattern of self-healing now.
That's a win in itself.
Yes.
So out of observation comes transformation. The mere fact that I'm willing to look at that means it's already starting to heal. It's already starting to shift. But over time, one nice tool for us is God help me be kind. God help me be kind. God help me be kind. But the undercurrent of that prayer is God help me be kind to myself.
Mm-hmm.
And then with an understanding, it's hard. You don't know. I didn't know this early in recovery, but going through recovery process, experiencing the benefits, the freedom, the strength, the capability that I receive through this type of journey, that's how I have compassion for myself.
That's awesome.
That's how I experience forgiveness for myself. I can forgive myself and have compassion for myself as a result of doing the transformative work. It doesn't happen as soon as I write this shit down.
Right.
Like, I'm not going to be, Duane, be compassionate. Don't feel so bad about yourself. Like, that's not how it unfolds. It unfolds through the practice of trying to be better. Over time, it dissipates. Over time, it dissipates. And I start to have compassion. And then because I behave delusionally, because I had these unconscious fears of abandonment and not good enough, when I start doing that shadow work with enough practice, I begin to start to recognize it. So I see it when it crops up. Oh, there's Duane. That's not real. Nope, you can't be abandoned. Nope, you can't be abandoned. God, shine your light on my insecurity.
Mm-hmm.
God, shine your light. So not only do I start to spot it, boom, I'm able to spot it in others.
Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
That's just his insecurity.
That's it. Yeah.
Oh, his belief structure is different than mine.
Mm-hmm.
He's believing in fear. He's acting in fear right now. He's not acting in fear. It's okay. So I also start to experience compassion for others. A nice prayer for us is, he too, like myself, is sick. Mm-hmm. He too, like myself, is sick. I'm dealing with a sick person.
Right.
Would I get mad at someone if they had cancer?
Right.
Fucking dumbass. Got cancer. No, you have compassion.
Right.
So why am I getting mad at someone when they're behaving in their delusion, in their illness? It's the same thing. So it opens the window for compassion. I start to experience a little bit of compassion because I realize he too, she too, like myself, we're just sick. We're just sick people trying to get well.
Yeah. And I like what it says here, and then we'll close on this. It says, deep self-inquiry is a courageous act. It is the cornerstone on which a new, healthier, and freer life can be built. By facing ourselves honestly and compassionately, we take a giant step towards recovery and healing. Moving, and I love this word, the way they use it, moving from the worship of a substance or behavior to a place of genuine, here's the key word, freedom and wholeness. Breaking free from the addiction.
Yeah. This
is how you do it.
Breaking free from my unconscious delusion that I need the world to be a particular way, otherwise I'm not going to be okay. That's bondage. That's not freedom. So moving through the world as a free man, it's all of this stuff. It's a big task, and it unfolds over time. But taking responsibility for my perspective, taking responsibility for my behavior, taking responsibility for my thoughts, then trying to do something about it, taking action, more positive action, taking action when it comes to my crazy thinking. We start to tiptoe into that freedom. And I began to learn the world and its people don't have to dominate me.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not a victim to any of it.
I'm not a victim to the person that left me in the grocery store when I was 4 years old for maybe 15 minutes.
Yeah, but it's so funny how, the victim
that shaped my
victim
reality.
mentality plays it out to be where it'd be 2 days instead of 15 minutes.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
I was screaming and crying and, and then I need to tell that story all
Yes.
made up. The made up story, I tell it a
Mhm.
bazillion times, and then that becomes my reality.
When I'm the victim, I don't have to take responsibility. And Joe Dispenza is real hot on this with the neuroscience. He says, well, and we find out that 50% of memory isn't even the truth. 50% of what I remember isn't reality. We made it up because our mind can't hold that much at one time. Like, I don't remember exactly what happened. I'm going to embellish it. And it was really bad. And it was dreadful. I felt so unwanted. And it's like, yeah, but that's only half the story. It's like, what else happened? You were being selfish. You were being controlling, trying to get your way. Your parent was probably having a bad day, couldn't stand you anymore.
I've seen this over and over again. I saw it once with my family. My aunt was having another argument with my grandma or something. And my aunt's like, the story didn't go this way. The timeline, like, when was this? And they're like, well, it's this time. It's like, you're saying that about me, and I was in Europe. Like, that's the truth. I can pull up the info to show you that I was in Europe. So the whole story you made wasn't even real, and not intentionally. That's just what the belief that got transcribed.
It's so funny. Addicts and alcoholics, or any addictive person, we're really good salesmen and women. Fantastic salesmen and women.
Yes.
Do you think Tony the Tiger would have sold any Frosted Flakes if he said they're okay? No, they're great.
Yes.
And that's how we speak. We embellish left and right. But if my motive is dishonest, if my motive is to get what I want, and I don't care if it harms you in the process, then I'm using that tool for evil.
Yes.
100%. It's my ego that's using that tool. It's not my spirit. We can be just as animated and just as excited in our recovery. I can still use that tool to benefit others. I can still use that tool to be of service. So I can bring that out of the shadow and into the light, and maybe it can do some good. Maybe it can motivate others.
Yes. Yeah. And I want people to understand this, like, true freedom. When you can break this paradigm, and you got to work on it every day, like we talk about these affirmations, but when you can kind of look at it and be like, oh, that's not the real Jason. That's not me acting in my higher self. The real me is this eternal, and I don't want to get too spiritual, but this eternal being that's, that's been here forever. That's the real me. The real me has the answers, knows and has the knowledge, has the wisdom to make on each decisions. So how do I tap into that? Through prayer, through meditation, through journaling, through self-awareness, through meetings, through going to a therapist, all these things, and then getting the realizations. And then in that realization, doing, like you have been talking about, just doing the work. It's easy, but it's hard at the same time. Because what happens, when you begin to open up to your higher self, what's happened for me? When I begin to open my higher self's like, oh, you can understand this now. Okay, cool. Well, you were telling me about your son. What is he, 2? And you're like teaching him some soccer moves.
Yep.
He's like kind of a little coordinated. He's 2. So it's like, what does this mean? He doesn't, he knows you can show him what to do and he'll take his foot and do it.
Yep.
But he doesn't know the rules of the game yet. He doesn't know about a soccer field. The grasshopper only sees the field that they're in. They don't see the farmer and the equipment and, the minute that you begin stepping back and saying, I'm not a grasshopper, I'm the farmer, I'm not the farmer, I'm, higher self. Higher self doesn't even exist on the plane of the earth, in and of itself. It's eternal. The minute you can gain these big God perspectives, then the problem looks so small. It's comical.
Exactly.
That's how I get now. It's like, oh, Jason's acting like a 11-year-old stupid boy that wants, what he wants, and he's going to throw a fit if he doesn't get it perfectly.
Totally.
And then I can laugh at it and then go in the right direction.
And that's freedom.
Yes, it is.
Comic relief cracks open my ego. In that moment of cracking open, God's light can shine in. And it no longer has control over me.
Right.
My unconscious fear, my unconscious desire to control, to get what I want,
I love that.
It dissipates, but it does take the work. It does take an honest appraisal. I have to really be willing to look at myself honestly. Oh, that's a selfish thought. Oh, that's a fearful thought. How many thoughts a day do we have? 60,000 on average. It's work, but you're worth it.
100%.
Your happiness and your freedom are worth it.
Yeah, and it organically will help you with your addiction or anything, whatever addiction you may have.
Yes.
Whatever it is that you feel like you're in chains to.
Yeah.
When you become self-aware, the chains fall off. You're in a self-imposed prison, and the key is inside of you.
That's so powerful.
Yeah, man. It's so funny. The door's actually open, really. There's really no prison, you know.
Abraham will say, we are so free, we can choose bondage.
That's our free will.
You're so free, you can choose bondage.
That's good. Well, let's end on that. I encourage people, subscribe on YouTube if you want to watch this in video. If you're listening to this in audio, we do ask you. We post a lot on social media, especially Instagram is kind of our main thing that we're on. DM us if you have any questions you want us to answer. We're going to be doing a Q&A because we're getting a lot of questions on DMs. But it's Recover Addict Podcast. You can look that up and follow us on Instagram. We'd love that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, bro.